Welcome to The Pass, where you'll get information related to sports, video games, technology, music, and our all-time favorite ass of the week. What is up? What's going on? Episode 224 of The Pass is here. As always, I'm your host, BT. I am here to let you all kind of get an insider on what's going on in sports, what's going on in stuff, predominantly tech, music, video games, things of that nature. I'm going to be upfront before I get started because I have kind of made a decision internally that I haven't really told anybody, and it's kind of for the sake of the show. Each week when I start off the show, I always shout out all the different podcasts, domestic violence, all of the lines and everything. What you will see in the show notes effective today, and I did have this set up last week, but if not, I'll confirm. You will see all of the links in the show notes for all of those promos, all of those businesses. I won't say those will never be removed, but those won't be read during the podcast. And I'm doing that, and I'm making that change for the sake of time, along with a lot of the stories that are shared or addressed. It's better to just go ahead and, just not really put massive amount of time into those messages or into those specific things when there's a lot more content that can be addressed and discussed. And I know a lot of times when it comes to us as listeners and when it comes to us as people, our main focal point is we want to get our information, gain what we gain from what we've heard, and go on about our business. And in all honesty and in all transparency, I don't blame anyone for that whatsoever. So as we normally do, I always start off with after we've recorded all that information, we go into our weekly picks. Football has been a show, to say the least. So we didn't do week 13, and I'm going to be lenient and fair to kind of give a simple yet condensed overview of week 13, and then we'll go into week 14 of my picks. So week 13, I didn't pick any of these matchups, but I'm just going to kind of go over them a little bit. The Rams still are at full force. They're playing pretty good. Dallas did shock New Orleans, which I think was a big, surprising matchup on Thursday. The big story from this week, and I believe they had a bye week, so that made it even more ironic. And let me double check. I'm sorry, they did not have a bye week. They played against Oakland. Kansas City played against Oakland. The big story this week was over the week has been Kareem Hunt. As far as him being suspended indefinitely, he is available to be picked up from waivers. So basically how that works is if any team is interested in getting him, he will have to serve and they'll have to acknowledge his 6-game suspension. And it's a tough ordeal and a tough situation because Kansas City kind of missed the mark on that one and dropped the ball. But nonetheless, it's been resolved now. Hopefully, there's no telling. The league may come down on Kansas City. We don't know. But it's still early in the mark to kind of look at that factor. I was glad I didn't do picks last week because I was a little upset since Carolina lost. We're 6-6 right now. We lost to Tampa Bay. And as of right now, you're kind of starting to kind of see teams solidify or find their placing within the playoff run. I don't have the playoff listing in front of me, but I think if I can get a quick view, I might be able to give you where we stand on what teams have a good shot and what teams might be kind of out of it. So as of right now, the Rams have clinched their division, and that's kind of what we have so far. Let's see, expanded. They may not give us a playoff run because I know a lot of times we're getting the playoff picture is like a tall order with football, but I'm gonna see what I can get you, because we get down to those last couple games and it gets kind of gritty to see who could make it, which teams are in the hunt. So as of right now, you have Kansas City and the Patriots on the AFC side, both projected as Kansas City 1 seed, Patriots 2 seed. For your wild cards, you're looking at Baltimore and Houston, San Diego, and Pittsburgh. Teams that still kind of have a chance are, which I don't see how that's possible, but they have the Titans, the Dolphins, the Colts. Titans, Dolphins, Colts, Broncos, and I'll go as far as the Bengals. I don't see the rest of the teams really making it, because it would have to be something astronomically weird to happen for them to make it. Oh, you know what? Never mind. It actually could be possible. So right now, at this current state of matchups, the Raiders are mathematically eliminated and the 49ers are mathematically eliminated. So based on what they're looking at, the Titans, Dolphins, Colts, Broncos, Bengals, Browns, Bills, Jaguars, and Jets are all possibly able to make it. Now, it's a tough road, but it's just kind of where things stand as of right now. On the NFC side, you're looking at the Rams, the Saints. Rams have the best record. Saints have the second best record in the NFC. And then you have the Vikings, the Bears, the Seahawks, and the Cowboys. Then once you break it down to teams that are in the hunt, the Panthers, to be realistic, I would say the Panthers, the Eagles, the Redskins, and maybe the Buccaneers, because they're 5-7. It's kind of a rare occasion, unless the Buccaneers do the unthinkable and win 4 straight, because then that will put them at 9-7. So that's what we have as of right now. The other teams that are still in the hunt are Packers, Falcons, Giants, Lions, and Cardinals. A lot of these, again, will change once teams are starting to kind of solidify their division. And as I did not mention this, but the 49ers at this time are mathematically eliminated. So that's kind of an overview. They mentioned this, and I didn't read the exact article, but they did kind of give an overview of saying that Carolina has a chance to get in, but it would come down to a lot of weird scenarios. But of course, as I'm always honest in saying, I'll see it. I believe when I see it. Tennessee did play against Jacksonville last night. The story of the highlight from that game that I did at least get to see online was Tennessee was able to get a 99-yard touchdown, running touchdown. And that play kind of opened up the floodgates, if you will, for Tennessee. Not last week, but for the week of week 12, my record was 6-6, which wasn't phenomenal, but it wasn't horrible. And my overall record for this season is 64, 57, and 1. So those were the matchups, and that was what I chose based on that particular week. I believe I had Carolina as the win, and they gave me an L. Oakland lost. Cincinnati lost. San Fran, Miami, and Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh was a shocker for me out of all of those. But, hey, that's football, right? So with the picks for this coming Sunday, we're going to just go ahead and get into it. The Jets and the Bills, going to pick the Bills because both teams aren't really doing great. Carolina and Cleveland, I would be the bad guy because I really am not a Baker Mayfield fan to that extreme. But on the flip side, Carolina hasn't been playing good football, but they need a win. This is probably the last shot, as I said in another episode, so I'm picking Carolina. Atlanta against Green Bay. Green Bay's in an adjusting period because they fired Mike McCarthy, which I think a lot of people were surprised by. Didn't mention this, but I'll share it as well. Carolina did make some changes after last week's loss against Tampa Bay, where they got rid of a couple of defensive coaches. They have not gotten rid of the defensive coordinators as of yet. Back to our matchups, Atlanta and Green Bay. Gonna pick Green Bay for this one. May surprise themselves, may surprise me. Colts against the Texans. Possible game of the week. Early call to say. Gonna pick the Texans. They've been playing pretty good football this year. Baltimore against Kansas City. Unless something outrageous happens, gonna pick the Chiefs for that one. New England against Miami, division matchup. As y'all know, I have a very love-hate relationship for their division, so I'm going Pats. New Orleans against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay did great last week, obviously, against Carolina. New Orleans is going to prove that they are trying to make that run for the top seed, if not at least securing home field and getting a bye week in the playoffs. So I'm picking New Orleans for that matchup. Giants against the Redskins. Redskins are in a very weird funk right now because they lost Colt McCoy for the season. Mark Sanchez is supposed to be the guy now, and it's a rough spot because a lot of people are not big fans of Washington's doing, so they feel like they should get Kaepernick. I really am confused about the storyline with Kaepernick and the NFL a little bit, only because I get it's the whole blackballing bit, but now it's like quarterbacks aren't really easy to come by anymore. So if you have a quarterback that's available and is still practicing and training, why not give him a chance? But that's not my place. But I'm going to pick the Redskins for that matchup. Cincinnati against the LA Chargers. Actually going to go Cincinnati on this one. And I know that's a weird pick, especially with the Chargers playing pretty good football, but I've been known to get screwed on a lot of games. This one won't be a surprise either. Broncos against 49ers. 49ers, what more is there to say? Really been a rough season all year. The Broncos have been playing pretty consistent with football. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Denver for that matchup. Detroit against Arizona. Going Lions in that game. Philly against Dallas. Huge win, huge game for both teams because this will kind of put more seeding into perspective for who's possibly could be seeded where playoff wise, or who could possibly be looking on the outside and not make the playoffs. So I will personally pick the Eagles because I feel like the Eagles are kind of put in that position where they need to either win it or just shut it down. Another late game, Pittsburgh against Oakland is in Oakland. Actually going to pick the Steelers to win on the road. I know that's probably going to blow my mind and confuse a lot of y'all, but hey, we're going to see how it goes. Rams against the Bears for the late night game. Even though it's at Soldier Field, I'm going to pick the LA Rams for that game. And our Monday night game, Minnesota against Seattle. Because Seattle has been quietly winning, but still quietly doing their part, I'm going to pick Seattle for that game to close out this week's matchups. So those are our picks for the NFL, and we'll see who wins and how everything turns out for each of those matchups. Now, basketball, I'm going to go ahead. Well, before I do basketball, because I want to make sure that I don't ignore or whisk by this because it did happen and a lot of people were concerned and confused and shocked, but shouldn't have been shocked because if they know football, they know how it works. As many of you are or aren't aware, college football season is over, basically. And we're at the point now where teams are now everyone's trying to get that spot and get the playoff. Either you're trying to get into the playoffs or you're trying to get a place for a bowl. You're trying to secure a bowl game. So that being said, you ran into a brick wall with who was going to make it, who wasn't going to make it, and with everything being set up the way that it was, you ended up with your final matchups because all of the bowl games have been presented and are set up. Let's see. I want to make sure we get to the nitty gritty. So Oklahoma was able to get in for the fourth seed by Georgia. So I'll give the backstory because I want to make sure I give everything in its full perspective. Alabama played against Georgia in the SEC final. If Georgia won, I'm projecting this after the fact because it's good. We can talk about it now. If Georgia won, Georgia would have moved up to either a 2 seed or maybe a 1 seed. And that's a stretch, but hear me out. If anything, they would have put them in a 3 seed. Alabama would have dropped. The lowest that Alabama would have dropped would have been 4. You don't want Alabama not in the tournament, but then you also want to make sure you give teams their proper credit. Clemson was able to win their ACC matchup against Pittsburgh, so they were still a number 2. Notre Dame, because they're independent, they don't have a tournament, so they were able to get in with no issue. Oklahoma won their respective, I think it was the Big 12. They won the Big 12 championship, which got them into the playoff run. So your 4 teams was, you have Alabama playing against Oklahoma in the Orange Bowl, and then you have Notre Dame playing against Clemson in the Cotton Bowl, which will then lead to the championship game that following week, if I'm not mistaken. For the Rose Bowl, Ohio State got in. Ohio State ended up being 6, and I believe based on matchups, and Georgia dropped to 5 based on the seedings. There was a lot of flack and a lot of fuss about UCF as far as them not getting their proper respect in the tournament. And there was a SEC spokesman who kind of made a public statement and saying, hey, if you want to get your proper cred of being a credible team, then maybe you should actually, and I mean, it's kind of a nice way to say, I didn't read the actual article, but kind of a paraphrasing of looking at it is, your schedule factors in how the bowl guys work in your favor or work against you. Meaning, if it has to be something heinous or unexpected to happen in order for a UCF to get in, because UCF doesn't, if UCF had played, say, Clemson, or they played in Alabama, if it either was a close game or they actually win, then you got that, then that generates and sparks that conversation. But if your matchups don't work to that favor, that's not your fault. On the flip side, I get it too for Alabama. You take the SEC games that Alabama plays are tough games. Not going to take anything away from that. But some of the cream puff games that Alabama gets on their schedule, Louisiana Lafayette, they get Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Like, some games that they get, it's like, all right, you already know this is going to be a win. They may make it a close game, but if anything, it's theirs to lose. I'll put it like that. So that kind of set the table, and we're at the point where we're at now. I probably briefly mentioned this, but I want to make sure I emphasize this again. Urban Meyer has looked at or considered retirement after this season. I'm going to say it because nobody else is going to say it. I think he knows something, and he doesn't want to ruin his reputation with Ohio State. So he decided to bow out gracefully. Between the allegations involving a former assistant coach, as well as just the program kind of treated him they were very mild on him for what happened. And a lot of people who are fans of college football were not big fans of that result, which I personally can understand. You have to look at it and be forced to step back and realize there really isn't, quote unquote, a right or wrong way of handling sanctions or handling coaches until it all is really put on the table and looked at and like, okay, we really need to go back and fix this. And that's usually what college football ends up doing. I don't think this is his last stop for coaching. I think he'll probably coach for one more team and then bow out gracefully. We haven't heard from him in a while, but Bob Stoops was a similar situation in Oklahoma. So, I mean, it's just a matter of the team has had a winning culture since he's been there. He's won, I believe, 1 or 2 playoff championships. I'm not sure. He also had to kind of bounce back from all of the sanctions and everything, from them not having the ability to play in the playoffs, but having a good record despite that. So, like I said, we'll keep an eye on what happens with Urban Meyer. I feel like, because it's December, I feel like he's going to sit out a year, because a lot of what was mentioned, and this was an actual article, was related to his health. He's been stressed. And I mean, and when you're coaching, I personally have never coached football, college football, let alone. But in coaching, it is a very stressful job, and it's a stressful position, especially with recruitment, with players, personnel, of course, coaches, other coaches, and, trying to come up with plays to compete with your opponent. All of that plays into whether you're mentally or physically able to handle or sustain that amount of time, on the field. So I feel like he's going to sit out this year. By December of 2020, we'll probably come back to the story where he may be coaching a new team. I don't know. We'll just see how things come along. Going to segue quickly to basketball, pro basketball, college ball. Before I continue, college ball is kind of at its idle point right now, where teams are kind of in invitationals. You'll kind of get a couple games where we'll see Duke play against, say, an Iona. You might see Michigan. You may see Kentucky play. You saw Michigan play against Iona. Kentucky's going to play kind of its soft matchups. They'll get a little bit of a challenge soon with North Carolina. They already played Duke, and we saw how that went. They will later on meet Kansas once they get into their conference play. But right now, we're just kind of teams just kind of playing and, kind of getting those easy wins, but challenging matchups, especially to kind of give you a perspective of guys who want to beat you, even though they may never see these type of athletes on the floor again in their own division or conference. Because I'll say this with college football, and I'm going to jump to NBA because it's just one brief story that stood out that I saw. But when your Valpos and your Harvards and your Long Beach schools are playing against teams that are in their division, those guys are all trying to play at their highest level to try and make it to the NCAA tournament. So you got that side of it. On the other side, there are those teams who are in that conversation that get to play against Duke, that get to play against Texas. The matchup earlier this week, Texas and VCU, big story, sudden surprising rivalry only because Shaka Smart used to coach at VCU and now he's in Texas. And even more ironic, the game they played the other day was in Texas. And last year it was a treat for VCU because they were able to see Mo Bamba play in person. So that was, a big deal. But I'm saying all of that to just bring to light how these teams, when you play against other schools, regardless of your division, you may not see that team again. And you want to play your best matchup, especially, in a circumstance, for instance, Virginia Union played against Duke. Wasn't the best of scores, but it was still a matchup and it was still a way to kind of get that exposure. I've stayed off of the Ball conversation for a while as far as the Ball family. LeVar is a lot more quiet. I've realized Lonzo is finally kind of being put in his position to handle his role in the NBA. LiAngelo, we're not going to hear anything from him yet. If anything, he's still trying to make that push to get into the NBA, which I think is going to be a long stretch unless he decides to go back to school, which I don't know how that's going to work, especially since he played in the JVA. Someone mentioned, and I'm not sure of this, I don't want to confirm anything because it's just kind of a random rumor that I'm putting out into the world. But the JVA may not have another season. We don't know yet. It was kind of weird, especially for the JVA to have such a shortened season this year. But I guess you got to work with what you have with the resources you're working with. Fast forwarding to now, LiAngelo, and that's the key story because he did play a game here in Virginia at one of our universities, Virginia State, and it's kind of turned into a tour for him a little bit, but it's also him doing his best to get exposure because he's in a very unique position with not just the Spire basketball team, but also with college basketball. there's not a certainty as to whether he's eligible to play or not. And that has been the talk for a while because a lot of questions have circulated of, was he getting paid when he played in the JBA? How did his financial situation work out with the international team, with Lithuania? Most importantly, the competition is not even just his financial side of it. It's the competition. Between him playing semi-pro or practically pro basketball, you're playing against a different level of players. And so when you come back to playing high school basketball, it's going to feel a little easier for you and you have a bit of an advantage. But is that fair to the teams, say a Oak Hill Academy, a university with Vernon Carney Jr., who just committed to Duke, your, Montverde, like those teams that they could possibly have a chance of playing against? How does that impact that lineup or that run through? And I'm not sure how, if there have been any actual players, well, not players, but actual recruiters coming to these games to see LaMelo play. Because I don't think LaMelo is going to play college ball next year. That's my quick fix on saying it. Like I say, it may be something different that he knows that I don't. But I feel like overall it wouldn't be fair. However, I'm not an analyst in that position to make that call. I'm not a administrator of college to say whether that's allowable or not. But of course, this is his senior year considering. So when he gets back to, when it comes time for recruiting, we'll see if that comes up as a story, or if it's going to be he's behind a year because he technically missed his junior year of school. He didn't go to he didn't go to high school. So that's something to think about as well. Going into pro ball, again, I've not been keeping up with a lot of stories. There may have been some tabloids, but nothing really has hit my wave or traction or attention of like, oh my God, we got to really get into this. There's a story, and this is again why I'm not a huge fan of reports, but I guess it's one of those we're going to really have to keep an eye on this if it truly occurs. I don't think he's going. But LeBron would like Carmelo in LA. Now, first and foremost, Magic and LeBron and, the other owner, I can't think of his name, Pakilovich or whatever, and I'm probably mispronouncing it horribly, but they haven't sat down and said, hey, let's figure out what we're going to do or how do we want to get Carmelo to our team. They're already dealing with internal injuries with Brandon Ingram being out a couple games. And just the chemistry, you're still trying to form chemistry with the team you have. So there's that factor. Rondo's been on the sideline. I know it was a game they showed where you saw LeBron on court in uniform and Rondo sideline. So you have that factor as well. Carmelo going to LA may not be the solution, especially if he gets to LA and there's an uncertainty of we're back at square one like he was in Houston, where will he be starting? Is he coming off the bench? And then there's also the important part that I didn't even think about because this was in the article that I was looking at, where Carmelo technically is still with Houston. So if the if the Houston LA trade or trigger occurs, there has to be players and draft picks that come along with this, which we don't see or don't have at this time, because if you think about it, LA has given up quite a bit for getting LeBron in, so that has to be taken into account as well. So those are kind of an overview or a visual of where we stand and where things are looking as of right now in the sports world and what we seen happening and what's coming. Now we're gonna go into stuff. And stuff, I have a few topics. I don't have like anything like massive, like, oh my God, we got so much to talk about. But there is one part of the show that might take up a bit, so I'm gonna go into it, but I'm not gonna consume it too long, if that makes sense. First on the list, and this isn't the story, it'll be the last story, which I'll definitely give its proper attention. The first story we're going to talk about is Tumblr. As many of you know, as many of my techies may or may not know, Tumblr is a blog site that has been up for a few years. They've mainly been the staple. I personally view, so they've been out since 2007. When Tumblr first came out, and this kind of almost takes me to my previous employment, where Tumblr was the resource of the go-to for if you wanted to start out with blogging, but you weren't really sure how you were going about blogging. You had a controllable environment to blog. So I was on Tumblr. I still have a Tumblr account to this day. I was using Tumblr as a blogging resource, and it was great for getting certain blogs as proper exposure. Still is to this day. I found as I got older, or as I started to use the blogosphere or the blog community, I needed a better place to store blogs, which now, as many of you know, I'm always on WordPress. You can check out my personal blog, brights82.wordpress.com, by the way. But anywho, I share all of that to say that Tumblr has suddenly, at some unexpected point, got out of control. Because now people use Tumblr as the resource for... So what Tumblr is doing now is they're going to permanently be banning any and all adult content from their platform, which will be effective on December the 17th. Tumblr's kind of creeped into the porn-based society. Well, not society, but the porn-based vibe with some pages. And it's gotten out of control. So basically what's going to happen is the ban will include any explicit sexual content and nudity with a few exceptions. What happened back on a couple days ago, the Tumblr app was actually removed from the iOS store due to a child pornography incident. And it was much more deeper than that as far as everything occurred. Banned content on the page includes photos, videos, and GIFs of human genitalia, female presenting nipples, and any media involving sex acts, including illustrations. The exceptions include nude classical statues and political protests that feature nudity. The new guidelines exclude text, so erotica remains permitted. Illustrations and art that feature nudity are still okay, so long as sex acts aren't depicted, and so are breastfeeding and afterbirth photos. Any explicit photos will be flagged and deleted by the algorithms after December 17th. Tumblr is emailing users who have posted adult content flagged by the algorithms and notifying them that the content will soon be hidden from view. Those posts will be set to private, which will prevent them from being reblogged or shared elsewhere in the Tumblr community. Users have a chance to appeal the decision in situations where they think there has been a mistake and the platform admits there's a chance that the automated tool it's using could make errors. It's a process that could take a while, as a bulk of posts feature explicit content. Users who run adult blogs can also export their content before the change takes place in order to save what they have. And then they kind of give Tumblr's frequently asked questions. It kind of explains everything. And like I said before, since 2007, Tumblr did kind of turn a blind eye to adult content. They tried to shield it from public view through what was called safe mode and more stringent search filters. But over the past couple months, and under the ownership of Verizon's OAuth unit, it began to consider removing content more aggressively. We've given serious thought to who we want to be our community moving forward. Who we want to be to our community moving forward. We've realized that in order to continue to fulfill our promise and place in culture, especially as it evolves, we must change. And this is from the CEO, Jeff D'Onofrio. He stated that Tumblr did weigh the pros and cons thoroughly before making a decision, and it also decided not to remove explicit accounts because it wanted to give the accounts a chance to post appropriate content instead. And they kind of go over a little bit more information on this topic. This is early, but I'm going to say it now because it may as well be said. In a couple of months or within a few years, Twitter's going to follow suit because it's available and accessible through Twitter as well. And I'm not snitching. Let me go ahead and get that out of the way now. But there are certain things, like when people view or use social media, Tumblr is social media, whether you want to look at it or not, whether you want to claim it as such or not. The worst thing you can have happen is to be somewhere and see something. And if you're at your job or you're at a public place and something comes up and you're trying to hide it or get rid of it, it's kind of almost the theory of, if I remove this, it's gone. But in reality, it's still there. It's just in a different location, or someone else could easily pull it up. Just like when people post tweets and they meant what they said, but they don't want what they meant to say to be interpreted incorrectly. So then they try to delete it. By the time you deleted that tweet, someone has already copied, screenshotted it, or copied the actual message, and it's in an article being talked about. So that's just something to keep in mind with the social media platform. But Tumblr making this move is huge, and it's shocking that I guess it's something that really is starting to kind of flurry their pages more frequently, and they want to get a hold of it before it gets out of hand. And personally, I don't blame them. So that's what we have for that story. Now we're going to kind of go into the world of Google. Google has not been able to get this right with the possible chat feature. We're going to go back a little bit with Google. Google first had Google Chat. Google Chat was what I consider to be the most convenient and simplest way of communicating with other people that had Google accounts or Gmail accounts. Because you literally could chat with them if you had, before we all were smartphone crazy, you were on a computer. So if you're on a computer and someone's chatting, you're reading email, if you had a chat conversation, your chats were right there in Google. No problem. Time progresses. Google Chat slowly disappears. Now we're at Google Hangouts. Well, Google Hangouts is on its last leg, if not being done soon. And it looks like the next app that's being removed is Google Allo. Now, Google Allo is new to me, so I may be a little green as grass about Google Allo, so I'll try to paraphrase it as best as I can. From reading what it does, it is a smart messaging app that helps you say more and do more. Express yourself better with stickers, doodles, and huge emojis and text. Also, Allo also brings you the Google Assistant. It looks like Google Hangouts to me, but we're going to let it be great. But it looks like that's about to go. So the rumors are true. Google is killing Allo, its smart messaging app, for good. The platform will continue to work through March of 2019, and users can export their conversation history until then. The so-called classic version of Google Hangouts, meanwhile, is slowly being sunset too. In a convoluted Twitter exchange, Scott Johnson, the head of Hangouts and Google Voice, explained to Stephen Hall a 9to5 Google reporter that Hangouts users will eventually be upgraded to Hangouts Chat and Hangouts Meet, a Slack-like competitor and video chat service aimed at businesses and other G Suite customers. Google's lineup of messaging apps have always been chaotic. And I'm sorry, not Google Chat. It was called Google Talk. Google Talk, Google Voice, Google Wave, Google Plus Hangouts, the version of Hangouts that supported SMS. The list is long and needlessly complicated. In 2016, however, the company managed to simplify its offerings with two services, Allo and Duo, designed for messaging and video calls respectively. Duo has been a quiet success and is now available on a wide range of platforms, including iPads, Android tablets, Chromebooks, and smart displays. Allo, meanwhile, has struggled to coax users away from established messaging apps such as iMessage and Facebook Messenger. The problem, I think, is threefold. First, people are entrenched in their favorite messaging apps. WhatsApp still reigns supreme. Birthdays, weddings, hungover, Sunday league football matches. My friends use it for absolutely everything. Persuading even a few of them to switch or download a different app to chat with me would be a Herculean task. Secondly, Allo doesn't have a truly unique and groundbreaking feature to tempt people with. It has the sometimes helpful Google Assistant and some cartoon selfie stickers, but that's about it. For many, the inconvenience of switching outweighs these minor benefits. Another problem is visibility. I can recall a single magazine or billboard ad that revolved around Allo. Had the company paid for a few TV spots like Facebook, it might have fared a little better than in the app charts. I can't think of a conference segment either that focused on new features or reminded people to give it a whirl. No wonder Allo has barely made a dent in the public consciousness. So what is Google doing now? They're focusing on Android messages, which we talked about before, and they give more information about that. So Google Allo, Google Duo. Google Duo I did see, I attempted to use for a little bit, but not long enough to really get in depth, in tune, and love it, but it was available. So there wasn't really much of a love-hate relationship for Duo. Google Allo never saw, obviously that was my first time reading and checking the article related to it. All of that being said, we're now at a point where Android Messenger is kind of the closest thing that that Android Messages is what Google is trying to solidify to give iMessages a run for its money, which I'm all for that. The reason I'm in agreement and I'm all for it is because you want to have an alternative option available. Sometimes that's, not thought of, but it's important to factor in when it comes to what you're setting up. So that's what they're doing now with Android and its upcoming features. We're now to the gaming section where I'm going to go ahead and talk about our list of game awards because I did not watch all of it, but I did catch what I could. The key winner that everyone cares about, most importantly, was the game of the year, and that was God of War. The competitors in that matchup for game of the year was Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Celeste, God of War, Marvel Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 was too new, so that's probably why I didn't get as much of a talk for that award. Best ongoing game was the winner was Fortnite. The other selections were Destiny 2, No Man's Sky, Overwatch, and Tom Clancy Rainbow Six Siege. Best game direction winner for that, once again, was God of War. The other competitors was A Way Out, Detroit Become Human, Marvel Spider-Man, and Red Dead Redemption 2. Best narrative, Red Dead Redemption 2 did win that award. Competitors were Detroit Become Human, God of War, Life is Strange 2, Marvel Spider-Man, and that's it. Best art direction winner was Return of Obra Dinn. Best score music was Red Dead Redemption 2. Best audio design was also Red Dead Redemption 2. Best performance was Roger Clocker's Arthur Morgan in Red Dead Redemption 2. Games for Impact, that winner was Celeste. Also, best independent game was Celeste. Best mobile was Florence. I'm surprised Fortnite was in that conversation, but I understand why. Best VR game was Astrobot. Best action game, Dead Cells. Best action, again, God of War. Best role-playing game, Monster Hunter. Best fighting game, Dragon Ball FighterZ. Best family game, Overcooked 2. If you have not played that, you'll see why. Best strategy game, Into the Breach. Best sports was Forza Horizon 4. Slightly shocked me, but I'm actually glad it did win because 2K19 wasn't that great. FIFA 19 is kind of in its, you really don't, I mean, it was there, but not really. Best multiplayer game, Fortnite. Black Ops 4 wasn't out long enough, so it makes sense. Content creator or streamer of the year was Ninja. He had a pretty tough group to go against, but Ninja, I mean, his trend has been massive. Best esports game, people might be shocked. It is Overwatch if you really look at it. League of Legends is there, but Overwatch you hear talked about frequently. Esports athlete of the year was Sonic Fox. Sonic Fox, I got to give him credit where it's due. Him winning the award was one thing, but his speech was even greater because he, as many people are not willing to do often, he came out about his sexuality, which he's done before, but I think on that platform it made it even more remarkable. But regardless, when it comes to him as a esports player, Dragon Ball FighterZ, Mortal Kombat, Injustice, you name it, he's kind of walked in and done his damage. He hasn't played Street Fighter, which I don't blame him. I think everyone knows their meta, so I give him props in those regards. Overall, like I said, there were a couple world premieres. I did not get to see many of them. I'm going to see if I can do research on looking those up and bringing those to light as well. Music Sesh or AirPods Escape really didn't do much escaping. Actually, well, I'm in the middle of it now. But Spotify has made what's called it's kind of a way of learning you as a listener and what you like to listen to and what kind of trends on your playlist. So a lot of it has been, I was able to learn, which still is unexpected to me that I'm a big Lil Wayne fan, but hey, I guess it's what plays or what hits at that point. So I did get that information. I was also able to find out, because I want to make sure I give you all of the accurate information regarding this. My top artists this year were Lil Wayne, Black, Marsha Ambrosius, LMA, and Her. Her makes sense. I was able to listen to 16,805 minutes of music. My top songs, and some of this kind of spans across my mobile device, my TV, my Echo, stuff like that. Top songs were Outstanding, of course, Taste, Free by Black, Cake Up by Daisha McBride, and For Real by Wiz Khalifa. Let's see. I'm trying to think what some other stuff was that I learned. Yeah, like I said, my top artist was Lil Wayne. And I mean, music for me has kind of been the outlet, and I'll go more in depth with that on my year review, because music probably will take up like at least 20 to 30 minutes of the show. So that's kind of been the musical flourishing madness that I've experienced as a listener of different songs. Like I said, I'm listening to what was curated or generated as a top 100 playlist or top 100 songs from this year that I've listened to. And most of the songs, I've either played them enough times where they kind of gained their attention, or music was shared with me through other people and it just stuck. I did find it funny because both me and one of my other music heads had For Real in our list, and she had BTS Fake Love. I had BTS Euphoria, but I had Euphoria for a different reason. If you want to hear more details on what those songs or how we all broke down on our music, we'll go into that. I'm going to be a special guest on Soul Gap with Ash and Jazz, which is in the show notes, to check that out. We are now at my favorite part, and this might be the funniest but weirdest ass of the week I've ever done. And the reason why is because I really don't know how Homeboy thought he was going to win this case. Our ass of the week this week is Emile Rattleband. He wanted to change his legal age from 69 to 49. Let me repeat that again. He wanted to change his legal age, not his name, his age, from 69 to 49. He wanted to be 20 years younger. He stated that he rationalized the request, stating that people can legally change their gender, and so he should be able to change his age. He claimed his age limited his opportunities and allowed others to discriminate against him. There was one point in this article that I wish I could find it, because I'm just trying to understand, like, I think it was a reference of saying that he felt 20 years younger. Just because you feel 20 years younger does not mean that you are 20 years younger. He says he provided, based on him requesting the age change, he provided medical records. The records indicated he has the body of a 40 to 45-year-old. Based on that evidence, he believed he had a good case to change his age. He doesn't feel like he's 69 and wants his legal documents to match how he feels. He did an interview with Washington Post. He said, we can make our own decisions if we want to change our name or if we want to change our gender. So I want to change my age. Totally different, bruh. Just totally different. The motivation to change his age was revealed in another quote. When I'm 69, I'm limited. He said, if I'm 49, then I can buy a new house, drive a different car. I can take up more work. When I'm on Tinder, wait. When I'm on Tinder and it says I'm 69, I don't get an answer. When I'm 49 with the face I have, I will be in a comfortable position. Just put the wrong age. According to Rattleband, he believes that a court changing his age to 49 will provide him with better dating prospects, job opportunities, and luxury items. The court where he petitioned responded today with a big fat no. The ruling said the court did not find any reason in Mr. Rattleband's arguments to create new case law in line with the statutory provisions on changes to a person's officially registered name or gender. Its main reason was that, unlike the situation with respect to a change in registered name or gender, there are a variety of rights and duties related to age, such as the right to vote and duty to attend school. If Mr. Rattleband's request was allowed, those age requirements will become meaningless. So in other words, this is kind of like a nice way of saying, if I'm 21 and if I were 21 and I decide that I want to be 15, we'll take off 6 years. I want to be 15 because I don't want to be an adult. Then I can make that a legitimate reason. But then you're going backwards in what you're trying to do. And that's not fair, because then it's almost like you're getting a chance to do those things over again. Like, nah, bro, you can't. It doesn't work like that. They went on to outline more in detail of what his court what the court's response was. I'm laughing because of the last paragraph, and then we're gonna close. Well, better yet, I'll read the last two. Despite losing his request to change his age, Rattleband felt positive about his future. He said he would appeal the decision to a higher court to become a lower age. Got it. Rattleband appears to be a man on a mission to get more Tinder swipes. We will see how the next court rules. Tinder is not always the way to go. That's my closing message for that. So I'm going to go ahead and close here, but I'm going to kind of give a overview of what's coming up, because next week 225, I'm going to see if I can do this. 225, I may use a recording from another show as the recording for 25. I'll have to get permission for that first. And 226 will likely be the year in review. And all I can tell you is this has been a year and a half of who knows what and God knows what. All I can tell you is just know that I got a lot of shit in store, and I'm really being put in an evaluation bubble for myself as well as those around me. So that's what I'm going to leave you all with today. As always, check out the shows. They're on passpodcast.com, Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast, as well as if you're looking to get a microphone, the Blue Yeti microphone is what I'm using. If you do not have the funds to buy the Yeti Nano. If you do not have the funds to buy the Yeti Nano, the Samson Meteor is how I started my podcast. If a lot of you have been around for the first 30 or 40 episodes, if not more, I started with a Meteor. It was literally a Meteor, a stand, and chaos. So you got to start somewhere to get somewhere. The hardest part that people don't want to do is the easy thing to run away from, and that's showing up. So if you don't show up, you can't show out. And that's what I'm going to leave y'all with today. Until next time, y'all take it easy. The Paz signing out. Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get any information specifically based on the shows, you can go to Spreaker.com/Brate Podcast or go to www.passpodcast.com. On both of those options, you do have the information related to what topics were talked about, as well as the specific links related to that specific story. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, the Paz signing out. でもそんなんじゃダメ、もうそんなんじゃほら心は進化するよもっともっとそんなんじゃダメ、もうそんなんじゃほら心は進化